So welcome back, and let's continue from where we stopped yesterday. And in this video we're going to implement authentication. So we're going to start implementing our back end, and we shall start from our back end. We're going to implement our database and then the authentication itself using data auth, and then we are going to, if possible, we shall also implement the front end authentication part of it, as well as rules. So let's get into the video. As you might have noticed, our project has a structure. Our structures have been well structured for the project has been well structured for us in a monorepo, and in our backend side we do have most of the things set up for us to scaffold that for us to use and start with, though our database is not really predefined for us so far. So this is the backend Wrangler JSON, which we have here, and the latest version of Wrangler, which has been published 2 hours ago, is 4.440, and ban install, and I have my terminal open to the back end, since we are going to mainly concentrate on the back end for now. So that's what we're going to do. So we have Drizzle ORM, the Drizzle kit itself all installed for us, and we have beta auth as well installed for us, and we are at version 17. Then we also have a .env for our environment, initiating our environment. We have our Honor, our Zod, what else? Let's see, our node is under 24, node types 24, and Drizzle, okay, TS down, same thing, TS6, same thing, it's the latest, and that is from the catalog itself, so there's really no need for us to rerun that and install to update whatever part is missing. And we shall remove this because we don't need it. What we're going to use is different. We shall remain with this, and also we shall remain with Drizzle Studio. We shall convert this to local, and we shall use Rango instead here. Rango for local data pushing. We shall get the information about this later on. This is correct. This is fine. This is okay. We can leave the rest as it is, and let's get things first. Since we are using we're going to use D1 database plus Drizzle, and currently in our project we don't have any database available. This is just dummy information. As you can see it, there's really nothing available for us, and we need to reconfigure our Drizzle config to be able to config to be able to work locally as well with D1 database, because D1 does not operate like how other databases work. They only work under the workers, under workers. Now there is a downside to using D1 is it's limited to 10 GB. That means each database you create is limited to only 10 GB, and if you fill up that 10 GB, you have to figure out a way to basically have multiple databases that do the same job and still work correctly together. For right now, I'm not going to get into that because I'm also not 100% familiar with how to actually do that, since this information just came to my realization currently recently, though there is a workaround to that by using durable objects. I do not know anything about durable objects, so do not ask me about that. Now what we are going to do is we are going to create our D1 database, but we're going to create it in a way that we set it up for a future possibility of scaling. So what we're going to do is come to our terminal and come to our barn wrangler D1 create. We shall name it Auth stage 1. So the reason why we are naming it Auth stage 1 is because later on, if we have if our stage 1 is filled, we can name it something else. Let me see, I'm not really familiar with how to name the Auth database itself. So let's see, authentication database name. Let's see if we can get some suggestions around. Well, they all sound very basic to me. Yeah, they all sound basic. Authentication, credentials, authorization. I think using authorization could be nice, but then authorization, so we could use the name authorization D1, authorization 1, then authorization 2, authorization 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, blah 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 blah. So for the first one, we shall name it authorization itself, just blank like that. So at the next will be authorization 1, and the other 2, the next 3, the next 4. So they have the same name, and it's easier to reference them to which one we are supposed to use. We shall deal with that when we reach there. For right now, name it authorization and run band wrangler D1 create authorization. And it's asking, would you like to add it to on your behalf? And I would say yes, add it on our behalf. And let's go back here, and it has added it on our behalf, which is a really big help. I think this is actually really nice. Now I'm going to add another. So we currently don't have a scheme to help us predefine for us our basically we don't have any definition for what these things do. Like, I don't have any information of what this is, what is happening. I can't really run anything other than that, so I do not know how the structure of the JSON for Wrangler is supposed to be. So I'm going to head into the web part of it, copy this information, the schema itself, which acts like a definition or a type prop for our JSON, in order for us to know what is happening and what does this mean. And here we know a list of flags, enable flags for upcoming features, and blah 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 blah, whatever the hell that is. Now I'm going to add placement, whereby placement I would like to add mod as smart. The placement, what it does, self-explanatory. Okay, this doesn't explain anything for you, but basically, to my knowledge, what the placement does is it puts your Wrangler close to the request of the person that is using it. If I'm like, currently I'm in Uganda, it will put the Wrangler closest to the closest server next to me, that the request will be as fast as possible and seamless for me. And rather than me making this manually, I would love it to be done automatically. Then there is observability. Specifies the observability behavior of the work. Let me reference from here. So what this does, to my knowledge, as I can remember, is enable loggings, I think. Yeah, I think it enables for one to log. No, anyway, let me just keep it there. We shall we shall figure that out we shall figure that out later on. If I could get from here, so assets and service compatibility. Let's remove it since we don't know what it really does. For right now we have this, so I'm going to add the migration directory, which we are going to have it as dot migration slash authorization. So this migration for this will go under authorization, and I'm going to add this inside. Okay, I think let's leave it without removing it. So our migration will enter inside authorization and the migration directory. And now let's set up. Okay, before we set up, we're going to run ban cfgen to generate our types for our Rango types. So generated that, and inside here we would wish to add the types themselves. Here is reference them here. There's really no point in it because it's already exported globally, but for the sake of argument, let's just have it there. And then now comes the part for the Rango. So what we are going to do is, in order for us to work with our Rango locally, we are going to have const is local environment equals to / this. So, and then we're going to create a type catch, try catch for us, and here we shall have console log that error. Error drizzle config there. Now we need to reference our Wrangler itself to get the V1 database, that the SQL database that's inside, in order for us to actually run it here, because this is supposed to call the credentials from the web itself, but since we're working locally, all the information locally is mimicked and done here. So our database is going to live in here locally, in order for us not to keep making a lot of requests off there. I think that is a more preferable approach for this. So in order for us to set this, we need to actually get the database from here to actually call it here and then reference it here. Now we are going to create another folder here up called databases, and let's create an index.txt in order for us to easily make a reference of everything inside there. Now let's also create it as /databases / everything inside, referencing the path name itself, databases, and everything inside databases. Copy and have the name correctly there. Expand this, have the name correctly there. So everything we add here is going to be we shall export it from our index so it's easier to reference it. So schema is going to be where all our schemes are going to go. Then utilities is going to have some tools and utilities we have. The reason why we're doing it like this is so that we can remove it from here and be able to create be able to later on turn this into a modular function by making it into a package that we can easily reuse. So for right now we are going to use that approach. And for Drizzle, so let's go Drizzle Cloudflare. So I'm going to look for some examples. Cloudflare D1 local development. We are going to look for some examples that we can follow up. And here we have one example that we can use. See, okay, we copy that as it is and then import these parts. It's okay for us to use fs here because the Wrangler itself is not really called this. The Drizzle implementation is not called in the. It's never used beyond here. Basically, it's only used here locally. It's only used locally, and it's never going to be used anywhere else. I don't really like these commas. I prefer this, but the correct format is supposed to be this. That's the correct format. I just don't like them, if I'm being honest with myself. So we look for the directory, which is Rango.Rango, and then we read through Rango and find the files that have SQL in it, and then if it doesn't have any file, return an error, return for us throw an exception, and then if it does, return it into our URL, and then we can use this right here. So what we should do, remove this, so we are going to reference using our process.env, the node environment, which is what this is running on. Type node, it's running on a node environment, so we can use that, and we should do this. Then copy this inside here, and then as well as we're going to use we are going to copy this inside here as well, and then copy our information is local environment, paste it here, and I think I either made a mistake or something of a kind. Process should work. What am I missing? Russian. Let's see. okay, this person used the same formatting. I think it's supposed to be outside, not inside. So dash dash. Okay, yeah, I think my bad, it was supposed to be outside. And here we have our setup. So if it is in production, it will use these credentials and this information here. And let me just put it as string, so that it comes back as string. Now we need to inform our Drizzle config where our schemes are going to be, and our schema is going to be, and that is under databases / schema, and it will look inside that. And then our migration output is going to be migration. Let's rename it to migrations. It's going to be dot migrations, which will place it under up here under dot migrations. Output. Now, since, as you remember, we said we are going to make it into, we're going to divide our databases to have different. So we shall have the database. Our first database, our first D1 database, is going to handle authentication, authorization, strictly authorization, because D1 has a limitation of 10 gigabytes for each database. So in order for us to not fill that 10 gigabytes easily, it's a lot, it's something for free, it's something. But in order for us to mitigate filling it faster, we can have separate databases for different scenarios that we're going to have. So for the authentication, we shall rename our Drizzle. Instead of Drizzle .config, we shall put it as auth.drizzle.config, so that it handles only authentication. Hence, our migration is going to go inside authorization here, inside there. And then that's it for our setting up. For this is the setup for our database, though we haven't referenced our schema, which is going to be drizzle.ts. As you can see here, let's see, let's have an example. Come on. Yes, so it's under, it's the name of it, and then .ts. So the name of our authentication our authentication schema is going to have authorization.ts inside here. That's where it's going to live, inside here, and other schemes that we're going to build up are going to live inside here. So up next, what we're going to do is copy this as it is and paste it. Okay, before we do that, let's copy this so that we create it up here under our schemas. We are going to generate it for ourselves using our Drizzle, our beta auth structure, and we are also going to change it from snake to camel casing. I do not like these dashes. I like it to have this approach to it. So here we go, and we eliminate it from here, removing it. Now remember, we created our utility. Yes, we want everything related to the database to end up here, and everything related to the routes and API to remain here. So here we are going to create our Drizzle client Yeah, don't ask me why I named it this. Just for convenience. I didn't name it that out of smarts, I named it out of convenience. So we have removed our database a Drizzle client initialization from here to up there to up here. So into our utilities. So now we do have authorization is our database. The name for our database is called authorization, because this is going to handle authorization for us. Okay, and here we are going to call our schema. So let's first start by casing. Change our casing to camel, and the rest of our Drizzle related things are going to be here. And this first Drizzle client is going to be the Auth DB. Auth DB. And since we are going to have multiple of them here, export it as Auth DB so that we can have other exports just right below here. So the reason why I did not create it as a function, because we could have created it as DB and this, and then we pass the database itself, and we can pass the D1 Drizzle, the D1 Drizzle database, and equals this is because this will mess up with our authentication, our beta auth instance, which has which would be better off calling it from here rather than making it instead of making it a function or a construct. Rather than making it a function, we make it a we leave it as a construct itself, and it will be easier for us to reuse this auth part in order for us to pass it as reuse it in our sessions and in our routes themselves. In our routes itself. So here we go. I'm going to remove this. We don't need that. We shall remain on this. And then we have that there, authorization, which we're going to import here. Import directly as auth schema from / so one step back into our schema and authorization, and we can reference that. So here we enter in our schema, and we reference it there. Remove this and let's make this come here and leave the others on top. Rather than calling it schema here, which, as remember I informed you, we are going to have multiple database instances, Drizzle instances here. For other cases, this database is only going to work for authentication and authentication specifically. So now we are going to get into the part whereby we call our schema authentication auth DB, and we have called it from there, which we have here, but that is too long for us. That's why we are going to come here and import that utility, import that, and then as well we are going to have our our database schemas directly exported from here. Schemas here. So we can easily export this as Auth authorization. We shall export it as authorization. Okay, so close this, and stick there. Here we go. Let's see if that worked. Index. Okay, that's not what I really expected it to do, but ignore that. Let's continue with it. And then for the schema, going to have to import all of it as schema from same location. Yep, we imported it from the same location. Actually, we can, other than that, since it's already being exported as it is, we can have it there as this. Confirm by entering, and it has account, it has session, it has user, it has verification, all available there. Now so the session cookies, let's uncomment them. So I'm commenting them, and what we are going to do is -env dot node environment equals to production, and then show this. If it is equals to production, then show this. But if it is not equals to production, ignore that statement. Okay, same thing with this. Same thing we're going to do with this. If equals to production, show. We shall use cross domains. We shall use cross domains if it is equals to production, and we shall show it, but if it is not, ignore it. So for env from our Angular, shall use cross origins. Though I would think, okay, let's not get into that right now. Okay, here we go. We have almost everything done for us. So authentication, casing camel, and then we are going to remove this. The reason why we are going to remove this, let me leave it around so that I can demonstrate to you later on as to why we are removing that. And then here below we shall add plugin block and have admin. We shall have the role of admin. We are going to import it from beta auth. We shall have the ability to have roles like admin and and rest of it from admin to It will basically different things. So we have admin role here, and then we shall also have React. Let's have also our cookies for React integration with TanStack. We want to have our React Start cookies, which is TanStack cookies, available as well. Okay, just a minute, let me rearrange this for myself. As I explained to you, I do not like the commas. I think the way this looks is way better off, though the correct way is for them to have these commas. But I found out it does still work fine without the commas. Now the next issue we are going to face is when we are generating our database structure for these, because we need to generate the database structure for our database. This structure here, let's actually remove, okay, let's keep it around because we don't want it to show error. But as we're generating the structure, you'll find that Rango does not run during a process time execution. That means if you're running it through process time, it won't work. It only works during runtime when the application is running itself. So here we are going to head into Honor as an example of how to generate this the structure for the better authentication database structure in order for us to use. So we slope down, come back here, and here it is. So since we are using ban, we're going to take the ban example, and now the first thing is we're going to go for the configuration. The first configuration is supposed to be the directory to where our authentication is actually located, which is under source /lib/auth.ts. Here it is, source lib auth.ts. This is where it is. And then our output of our scheme is where our schema that is going to be output under databases /schema /authorization, which is schema authorization. Should have just copied the whole path and just edited it. So databases schema authorization. So databases schema authorization. I could have just copied it from there for the sake of this. Ignore that. What did I just, okay, and now comes the part whereby I would want us to copy this as it is. Since we are using it locally, instead of it always going back to beta auth CLI to get the latest beta auth CLI, we can have the current version already available for us installed, so that we don't have to deal with that every single time. We don't have to deal with it first reference, making a reference to the packages, to the npm packages, the node packages for the latest version of the CLI, but just using the one that is already pre-installed for us, which simplifies our work regardless of whether we're using it offline or online. So this is going to be, So this is supposed to work, but it's not going to work for us because of what I explained to you, that Wrangler, the Cloudflare Workers, does not run during a process time. Doesn't run during process time. That means when trying to execute something during the runtime, during the process time, it's not going to work. It only works when Wrangler itself is actually running, and here it's not running. So here you see Cloudflare Workers can't find model Cloudflare Workers because it's not running. Now, in order for us to deal with that issue, we're going to have to create either we create it here or we create it under database. I think we are creating it under database. The other parts of it is really no issue, because the only place we're going to ever have this issue is here. Now you could easily mitigate this by importing by changing this to process, but the problem is process does not reference the Wrangler database, the Wrangler JSON structure itself. It doesn't reference this. That means it won't reference the database itself, but it could actually work, but most of the times it will also fail, and it's better off we just use Wrangler itself. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our env client as well, .ts, which we shall use as export const. So what we're going to do, export const env slash this blah. Actually, we don't export this, and this will return process.env, and then we shall export our env from here, equals to export const env equals to let's call this fallback. Our fallback is this env, and our main default is going to be our Wrangler itself. Okay, let's do this, copy it here. So our main fallback is going to be this. Our main environment variable, it's going to be this workers, but our fallback is going to act as this. So here we shall have env slash blah blah blah. And then we can switch it to this, and it should work fine. So our fallback will be as Cloudflare Workers. So env dot not really Forgive me for that. There's something I may be missing here. Let me make a reference to one of my projects. I'm looking for a way to create that to export correctly, and just a minute. So we have globals. Oh no. um, and so let's initiate our dot environment right here in index. So as was in here, initiate it there. Then the thing that I'm looking for is this, so I should have put it as a function rather than a construct. Function as a function here, and then we can use it wherever we want, okay, without minding about that. So yeah, I think this works for us here, and all you need to do is remove the fallback and just replace it with the main, or else we can create two parts of it. So far this is how I know how to do it. There could be a better way how to do this, but for now this is the only way. The Rango shouldn't be called at all because it will create issues for the whole. As long as this is implemented, it will create issues. So if it is not called and used at all, it will be ignored and underuse the process, and during our build it will work just fine. So come back here and import it from database here. Okay, export it from utilities and environmental client, env client, and import that, and we have that running. Now when we run our burn CLI, which still having an error, let's try to hide this as well and hope it works this time, and still having an error. Okay, cfgen and our issue again comes back to the same issue that we have here. So this has to be imported from our env part of it, or env client, rather than from, and this here can be okay, it will be ignored. Now it should work. As we rebuild this, just a minute for it to get done, and let's generate our first schema for our authentication. So there we go, and this should work now. Yes, and there exists already. Yes, overwrite it, and there we have our schema, and you see it has changed from created dash art to create art, and everything else is also, just changed. And this is a nice thing to have. Nice part, everything working just fine. So far we have email and password enabled. This is the authentication you shall have, email and password enabled. And the next thing we shall do is called database hook, and create shall have user, and when creating a new user, we shall have creating a new user. So before creating a new user, we shall have a variable here. Before a new user is created, shall return / async, and it has the following. It has user info there. Let's have this, and then have ctx context id. Let's have user here. Other information, user. Context doctor count why should I bother with that? I do have it here. I do have it implemented, so shouldn't really stress myself with that. So basically we want to figure out a way whereby instead of us trying to figure out whom to assign certain roles to, our first user is always assigned to be our administrator. So we take our count. We shall count the users and check if there is more than one user, then that person becomes a user. But if there is only one, if there is no user, that means there is 0 users, then the first user is always going to be our administrator. So we return data. So we return every other information about the user, which involves the ID, blah blah blah, and all the rest of them. Then since we have admin here, this has added another variable to our database called role. So we have a variable called role, and under role we can add and differentiate who owns the database scheme, and then define roles and permissions for who can access what in our database. And so we have our count here. Before you create it, first check if the users that are available is not equals. If it is equals to 0, sometimes this tends not to work, so I'm going to remain it with equals. If equals to 0, then the user is the owner of the entire platform. But if it is not equals to 0, then the user is a user, unless the owner changes that permission for them, which the owner has administrative ability to change this. Then we are also going to add open API in order for us to have our APIs, to see the APIs that this uses itself. And here we're going to have path and under API so it's open API, and we have our path, and we're going to name it /docs. So we're going to name this path /docs, so we shall access it under, we shall access this under our path, which is going to be docs, which is going to be /docs. So copy this and let's place it up here. Then as well as let's add the base path for our app is going to be API by default. That is what it is. It's API auth, and so we actually don't need to do this because that's going to be our default path. The other thing we're going to take, I think it should be already provided here. So the other thing we're going to have is secret and base path. Now there is no need for us to regenerate because there's really nothing we have created that needs regeneration. These ones are done at API level, not at database level, and this is also API level, not database level. So that means nothing will be generated to be added here. But for the sake of argument, let's just run it for the sake of passing time, and it's created. Now what we're going to do is going to copy this command as it is and add it here below cfgen, and we shall add it as authgen, and right there. Now we do need to test this, that it works, and clear, and we have ban that run, and yes. Then test it again without the ban part of it, and yes, and it works just fine. So we have that done for us, and now the next thing we are going to do is generate the schema itself. So generate the schema itself, config auth.drizzle.config.ts. Now for this, the reason why I've added config here is to point it to the direction of the config, which is auth config itself, and I'm going to have to name it into auth itself, the auth config. That means db generate auth config for us, which is going to generate our auth config. Then the next thing we're going to do is copy. I'm going to copy also this from here. Wait, yeah, we can use that or just directly call it there because it's in the main folder itself. So next part is to generate it locally, and this is right here. So generating our Wrangle database locally is usually going to be from ban Wrangle d1 apply local, which is going to be auth apply, so apply slash local. It's going to end apply slash local, and here is supposed to be the name of your database that you're referencing from. So we are going to make the reference from our database, which is going to be authorization is the name of our database, authorization. So first thing we're going to do is generate this, and when this is done we go to the next. So let's write a simpler command, db auth, to handle everything auth related here, and we copy. The first one is going to be ban expand this and ban run, and then migrate to the local so that it's available in our local database. Now up next we can now change this into our correct, which automatically pulls it, and now we are going to run ban migration, and then it has generated our migration, which is this here, and then next is going to apply our migration, generate our migration locally into our Wrangler, which is this, and it's going to be available here. Let's wait for that to get done. And then we shall execute this and test it out. So as we wait for that to finish executing, let's also handle this, which is our studio. Let's copy this and put it right below here. So our studio is going to be the studio for authentication. Since we are going to have multiple parts of this, so authorize, copy this from here, and to our correct path here for our database. And I do think we could okay, our migration has been applied to our local database, and we shall do something that for right now we're working locally. so there is really no point in us having to implement this other database related part of things, but we shall implement it later on. For right now, just leave it as it is and ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist, just ignore it. So now to test if so since our setup came with our implementation for authentication itself, the cross, and then the authentication itself for our database path, for the path to our database itself. And here, because here basically how this works is we call our authentication, the path to lib, the auth lib itself, and then have a handler that handles basically the request itself, and the rest of it is taking from the header, which is raw, the request itself. See request from the header, not from the header. This is just the raw data that is being requested through our API path. So that's all it's going to take in, and this should work just fine, as we can test it now. We run ban install, everything installed, new packages installed, and div run, and we need the backend only. So the backend is available, hello world, and now we need to test our API auth docs. That's how we shall confirm if our authentication has been implemented, and here it is. Our authentication has implemented, auth session and everything has been implemented. Now next thing we are going to test is we're going to test our studio itself. Ban db studio auth to see our authentication database structure from our Drizzle studio, which we implemented here. So check it out, config with Drizzle, and here we have it here. So we shall stop here and start the next part of the video from here by implementing this to the front end side of our application. I don't want this video to be any longer and difficult for me to upload, so watch out for the next video. The next part we shall be implementing this into the front end side and actually authenticate to it, and then we shall get into adding the other parts to create, and then we shall get done with that and start now implementing parts of a CMS by creating our website, creating the headers for our website, and as well as creating an admin management site whereby we head to it as admin, and then have our own dashboard that we can use to edit the administrative side of things and manage them from there. Basically like a CMS, a content management center, or your business management center itself. So see you in the next video. I'll stop right here.